Hello and welcome. I just wanted to take the time to thank everyone who has subscribed to the channel over the past 3 months. I've really been pleased with the reception the videos have received, and the support everyone has given me is really appreciated. If you're finding this for the first time and you want to see more of my content, please like, share and subscribe, as well as hitting the notification bell so you can keep informed whenever I release a new video. Again, a massive thank you to everyone. I hope to continue making content which you find worthy of sticking around for. So far I've covered many cases involving murderers who were mentally unstable, such as Vincent Lee, Jared Lee Loughner, Ed Gein, and so on. But the topic of today's video is a man who could be viewed as someone who encompasses them all. A man whose crimes I can only describe as pure evil. Today, we look over the case of Richard Trenton Chase. Richard Trenton Chase was born on the 23rd of May 1950 in Sacramento, California, to parents Richard Chase Sr. and Beatrice Chase. On the surface, the Chase family appeared to be just like any other family living in post-war America in the 1950s, but behind closed doors, it was a different story. His mother and father were strict disciplinarians and would hand out punishment regularly. When Richard Jr. was 2 years old, his father force-fed him to the point where he vomited. Richard's younger sister, Pamela, would later tell of the frequent confrontations her brother and father had, whether it be emotional abuse or physical abuse. The parents would also argue constantly, particularly over Richard Sr.'s poor money management and alcoholism. Beatrice would also accuse her husband of trying to poison her, while Richard would regularly accuse his wife of sleeping with their neighbours. As a very young child, Richard was described as an average boy. He was well liked by his teachers, and it was said that he was popular with other children, many of whom would attend his birthday parties. All things considered, there really wasn't anything noteworthy to mention during these formative years. However, it wasn't until he was a little bit older that his strange behaviour began to reveal itself. Richard's parents paid little attention to their son, instead deciding to focus on their failing marriage. By the time Richard was 10 years old, he had already met the criteria for the McDonald Triad. For those who don't know, the McDonald Triad is the idea that the following 3 conditions, where met, are a good indicator of someone becoming a serial killer. These are: being cruel or abusive to animals, especially pets; setting fire to objects or otherwise committing minor acts of arson; regularly wetting the bed. Initially, Richard would capture, torture, and kill cats. It was said that he was fascinated with their blood, as well as their insides. His interest was described as clinical. His disturbing interest with dead animals would soon extend to killing birds, rabbits, and dogs. It even got to a point where he had killed so many stray cats that his neighbours became aware that there were noticeably less in the area. Richard's mother would even find a dead cat buried in the soil among her flowers. Life in the Chase household would continue to deteriorate. By age 13, Richard's parents would lose their family home. It was also at this time where Richard became convinced that he was a member of a 19th century gang that included Jesse James as one of its members. By the time he was at high school, Richard's parents were now separated. Richard and his sister would live with their mother and move to Los Angeles to live with relatives, although within 4 months, the family were back in Sacramento. Richard was able to form relationships with several girls in high school, but the relationships would fail to last long. Richard had developed erectile dysfunction. Richard knew that he was attracted to women, and he would consult with a psychiatrist over this issue. The psychiatrist would conclude the issue Richard was experiencing was due to either repressed rage or mental illness. However, Richard would decide against following this up for further treatment. He believed that the real cause for his erectile dysfunction was due to a lack of blood. In order to remedy this, he would begin consuming the blood of animals. Richard was also drinking heavily, as well as experimenting with drugs such as marijuana, LSD, and amphetamines. His grades began to slip, and his friends would soon become more aware of his strange behaviour. Despite this, he would graduate from Mira Loma High School in June 1968. By the time Richard was 21, he had moved into an apartment with friends he had met during his time at American River College. However, it soon became apparent to his friends that there was something very wrong with Richard. He would regularly be seen walking around naked in the apartment, regardless of whether there were other roommates present or other guests. They would describe his behaviour as very disturbing. They would also say that Richard seemed to be in a constant drug-addled state and would lock himself in his room for days on end. Eventually, Chase's roommates had had enough and told him he had to leave if he didn't stop with the strange behaviour. Richard would refuse, prompting his roommates to leave instead. It wasn't long after they had left that Richard would return to the family home. However, this arrangement wouldn't last long. Richard's father would pay for a new apartment for his son to live in after he would accuse his mother of trying to poison him. Now in his new home, alone, Richard's mental health continued to spiral out of control. As well as continuing to catch and kill animals, where he would eat their flesh raw and drink their blood, he would also on occasion blend the entrails of the animals he killed and mix this with Coca-Cola to make smoothies. He would apparently do this as he believed that it would prevent his heart from shrinking to the point where it would disappear. Among other beliefs, Richard developed hypochondria. He complained that his heart would regularly stop beating and that there were bones growing out the back of his head. He also believed that his stomach was backwards, and on one occasion, he entered an emergency room searching for someone who he believed had stolen his pulmonary artery. By 1975, Richard's bloodlust would soon have negative consequences. After injecting the blood of a rabbit that he killed into his body, Richard fell ill. He believed that the rabbit had ingested a battery, when in fact he had developed blood poisoning. He would be involuntarily committed to a mental institution after being treated in hospital for the blood poisoning, but would escape soon after, returning to his mother. However, he would soon be apprehended and sent to the Beverly Manor Psychiatric Hospital. There, Richard would talk openly about his fantasies of killing rabbits and consuming their blood. He would be frequently found with blood smeared on his face, which Richard would blame on cutting himself shaving. However, the truth, as it was discovered, was that Richard was catching birds near his window, where he would bite their heads off and drink their blood. It was at this point nurses and other patients would dub Richard Chase as Dracula. In 1976, after Richard was prescribed a concoction of psychotropic drugs, he was released back into the care of his mother, who by now had left her husband. However, for reasons unknown, Beatrice didn't think that Richard needed the drugs he had been prescribed and slowly began to wean him off his medication. The more Beatrice ignored Richard's mental health problems, the worse Richard's condition grew. He would care less about his personal hygiene and would stop eating, seeing his weight reduced to just 145 pounds. Richard's mother would be so in denial over her son's mental health that even witnessing her own son ripping apart a cat with his bare hands, then smearing its blood over his face while screaming, would simply unfaze her. She would carry on as though everything was normal. Richard would eventually leave the home he shared with his mother after she bought him his own apartment. On the 3rd of August 1977, in Pyramid Lake, Nevada, police discovered a Ford Ranchero which had been lodged in a sand drift. When they inspected the vehicle, they found 2 rifles, a pile of clothes, a bucket full of blood, and a liver. Believing they had stumbled upon a crime scene, police would begin searching for whoever left the pickup truck there. They would soon find a man perched on a rock approximately half a mile away. The man was covered head to toe in blood, naked and screaming. When the man saw the police, he fled. Police would capture the man who identified himself as Richard Trenton Chase. After he was arrested, he claimed the blood was his own that had seeped out of him. After police examined the contents found within the car, it was found that the blood in the bucket had belonged to a cow, as did the liver. Police would release Richard without charge. It would take 16 months from the incident at Pyramid Lake before Richard's hunting and killing of animals no longer satisfied his needs, and by December 1977, Richard was now hunting people. On the 27th of December 1977, Richard Chase fired a .22 caliber handgun into the home of a Sacramento woman. Police would search the home and find the bullet in her kitchen. Fortunately, nobody was harmed. However, just 2 days later, while unpacking the shopping from his car, 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin would drop dead outside of his home without warning. When his wife rushed to her husband's aid, thinking that he had suffered a heart attack, she was shocked to discover that her husband had been shot dead in what was later determined to be a drive-by shooting. Neighbours would say they thought the shots were from a car backfiring. Another neighbour would tell police that he witnessed a man walking around the area with a .22 rifle earlier in the week. Police would learn that the ballistics of the bullet fired in the incident 2 days earlier matched that of the bullets used to kill Ambrose. As far as Richard Chase was concerned, this murder would be just a warm-up to what he had planned for the people of Sacramento. On the 11th of January 1978, Richard restrained a neighbour until he gave her a packet of cigarettes. She would end up giving him what he wanted and was left unharmed, although very shaken up. Less than 2 weeks later, on the 23rd of January 1978, Chase would attempt to break into the home of a woman, although finding that the doors were locked, he would leave the property. Chase would search for homes that were unlocked. This was because he believed homes with unlocked doors would be a sign that he was welcome to enter, whereas if the home was locked, it was an indication that he wasn't invited. This is similar to vampire law, where a vampire would need to be granted permission before they could enter a property. While he was wandering around, he bumped into Nancy Holden. Nancy attended the same high school as Richard and was disturbed by his disheveled appearance and poor hygiene. Richard would try to get a lift from Nancy, but was unsuccessful after she refused. That same day, he would enter the home of a young married couple, where he would steal from the home, urinate into a drawer which contained their infant's clothing, and defecated on their son's bed. However, the family would return while he was still in the home. They would find Chase inside, where the husband would attack him, but Chase would eventually escape. Richard would continue testing the doors of homes until he came to the home of David and Teresa Wallin. David was at work at the time, but his 22-year-old wife Teresa, who was 3 months pregnant at the time, was taking rubbish out. Her door was unlocked. Richard entered the home, where he surprised the expectant mother. Chase shot her 3 times with the same gun used to kill Ambrose. One shot hit Teresa's hand while trying to defend herself, but the other 2 shots hit her head, killing her instantly. Chase would drag her body into the bedroom, where he would rape her post-mortem. As he was doing this, he would stab her repeatedly throughout. After he finished, he cut her body open and removed several of her internal organs. He then collected Teresa's blood with a bucket. He would pour the blood into a bath where he would bathe in it. He then sliced off her nipple, and using an empty yogurt pot, he would use it to drink Teresa's blood. Before leaving, he found dog feces and returned, where he stuffed it in Teresa's mouth and throat. He also removed her kidneys and pancreas, before crudely placing the kidneys back inside her body. David Wallin would return home later that day and discover the horrifying scene that awaited him. Upon calling police, they soon arrived where they found an unexpended .22 caliber rifle shot inside the letterbox, trash scattered all over the home, drag marks where Chase had moved her body, and the mutilated remains of Teresa. This was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Police called in help from the FBI, who sent agents Russ Vorpagel and Robert Ressler to assist with the investigation. They would draw up a profile of the killer, where they would describe the person responsible with frightening accuracy to Chase. They would say that the killer would be a white male, aged between 25 to 27, disorganized, tall but malnourished, physically unclean, a loner with a history of mental illness. They would also suggest that the killer would be a high school or college dropout with no military experience. The most worrying feature of the profile, however, was that they believed that the killer would strike again. Just 2 days after brutally murdering Teresa Wallin, Richard Chase purchased 2 puppies from a neighbour. Chase would kill the 2 animals and consume their blood before dumping one of their bodies on the front yard of that neighbour's home. Then, on the 27th of January 1978, Chase would strike again. He approached the home of Evelyn Meroth, a 38-year-old mother who at the time was babysitting her 22-month-old nephew, David Ferreira. Also inside the home was Evelyn's son, Jason, 6, and Dan Meredith, 52, a neighbour of Evelyn's who had stopped by to check on her. At the time, Evelyn was in the bath while Dan was keeping an eye on the children. Dan would step out into the hallway as Chase was entering the home. He would shoot Dan from point-blank range in the head, killing him instantly. Again, this was the same gun used to kill his previous victims. Chase then turned over Dan's body, where he would steal his wallet and car keys. Jason, upon hearing the gunshots, would race to his mother's room, but was shot twice in the head, again at point-blank range. He would then shoot David in the head. Chase would move to the bathroom where Evelyn still was. He shot her once in the head, killing her. He then dragged her body into her bedroom, placed her on the bed, and began to sodomize Evelyn, while also slicing the back of her neck to extract blood that he would drink while violating Evelyn. After finishing, he then stabbed her 6 times in the rectum, piercing her uterus in the process. He then stabbed vital points on her body, causing blood to pool into her abdomen, which Richard sliced open and drained into a bucket. He would then drink all the blood. Chase then gathered David's lifeless body, took him to the bathroom, and split his skull open, where he ate parts of David's brain. Unbeknownst to Chase, Evelyn had arranged a play date for Jason. When the young girl knocked on the door, this startled Chase, who fled the home, stealing Dan Meredith's car. The girl was unharmed and alerted a neighbour who then called police. They would arrive to the gruesome scene and quickly determine that they were dealing with the same person who killed Teresa Wallin. Medical examiners would find an inordinate amount of semen in Evelyn's rectum, which they indicated was a result of Chase climaxing an unusual amount of times. Police would also find a perfect handprint belonging to Chase, as well as perfect imprints of the soles of his shoes in Evelyn's blood. However, there was one thing the police were unable to locate while examining the crime scene. David Ferreira. Richard Chase had fled with the young boy. Police scrambled to locate young David. At the time, they were unsure whether the boy was still alive, although a bullet hole they found in a pillow where the young boy had laid left them with little hope. Regardless, police were working tirelessly to find any clues within the carnage that may give an indication as to David's whereabouts. 5 days after the mass murder, Nancy Holden became aware of the FBI profile and alerted police to her encounter with Richard Chase and informed them that he may be the person they were looking for. Nancy would assist with providing a police sketch of Chase. This was crucial information the police desperately needed. Police then ran a background check and discovered that he owned a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol, the same one which was used in the murders. Upon learning this, detectives as well as a police team visited Chase's apartment. Chase refused to speak with police, so the detectives and the police hid down the hallway where they waited for Chase to leave. Soon, Richard left the apartment carrying a box covered in bloodstains. Chase's clothes were also covered in blood. Police apprehended Chase and confiscated the box. They searched him and found Dan Meredith's wallet, as well as the .22 semi-automatic handgun. Inside the box, they found pieces of blood-stained paper and rags. FBI agents Ressler and Vorpagel, along with detectives, then searched Chase's apartment. They would find the apartment drenched in blood all over, from the walls, floors, ceiling, cutlery, and even Chase's utensils. They would also find the blender that Chase would use to make his twisted smoothies. It would contain parts of rotting internal organs, as well as coagulated blood. Despite no sign of any pets, there were 3 dog collars and small pieces of bones found among the residents. When police searched the fridge, they found a disgusting scene. They would discover dishes with body parts placed on them. A container held human brain tissue, which police would later discover would be David's. There would be photographs of human organs taken from a science book, which was discovered on a table. Furthermore, newspapers turned over to the for sale section showed circles where Chase had identified people selling dogs. Finally, a calendar was discovered with the words "Today" marked on the dates of the Wallin and Miroth murders. Chillingly, the word "Today" was also written on another 44 days on the same calendar, demonstrating that Chase was far from over with his quest for blood. While Chase was now in custody, David Ferreira was not located in the apartment. Now in custody, police were building their case against Chase. Initially, Richard admitted to killing dogs, but would refuse to speak about the murders or the whereabouts of David. When police attempted to take a sample of Chase's blood, he became erratic and resisted police. They would end up having to restrain him to take the sample. This would be the first time they'd learn of Chase's fear of losing blood. Faris Salami was appointed as Chase's attorney and was immediately separated from the detectives who were working to obtain a confession from him. Police would continue their search and use bloodhounds in the hope of picking up David's scent. They would even search the home of Richard's mother, although she proved to be uncooperative. Despite the weight of evidence stacked against Richard, Beatrice believed this still wasn't enough to convict her son of any wrongdoing. Chase opened up to an inmate that he drank the blood of his victims due to his belief that he had blood poisoning and that drinking their blood would heal him. He would also tell the inmate he moved to hunting people because he grew tired of hunting and killing animals. It wouldn't be until the 24th of March 1978 when a church janitor came upon a box containing the remains of a male baby. After police responded to his call, they would arrive and immediately recognize the clothing. They had found David. He was decapitated, and his head lay underneath his torso, which had become partially mummified. They saw the gunshot wound on his head, as well as several stab wounds and broken ribs. Furthermore, the keys which belonged to Dan Meredith's vehicle was also found in the box. The prosecution would seek the death penalty, whereas the defense would enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, the prosecution were determined to demonstrate that Richard was able to tell the difference between right and wrong, and that he wasn't compelled to murder. The prosecution would lean on the legend of Dracula, as well as citing similar crimes and studying blood rituals in various cultures. They would note that some believed ingesting another person's blood would heal them or even strengthen them. The aim of this was to show that while these can be sincere beliefs, they were not an excuse for murder. Due to the notoriety of the case within the local area, it was requested that the trial was moved. Eventually, it was agreed that it would be moved 120 miles away to Santa Clara County. Chase would be examined by a dozen psychiatrists. Chase confessed to one that he was disturbed by the killings and was convinced that they might come back from the dead to seek revenge. Another psychiatrist determined that Chase was suffering from an antisocial personality, not schizophrenia, and as such, was aware of his actions and knew it was wrong. Furthermore, there was no evidence during his admissions that he ever felt compelled to kill, as Chase would say that the blood was for therapeutic purposes only. The trial began on the 2nd of January 1979 and lasted for 4 months. By the time Chase took the stand, his weight had dropped to 107 pounds and looked a shell of his younger self. He was charged with 6 counts of murder. He claimed that during the Wallin murder, he was semi-conscious and would discuss how he was mistreated throughout his life. He also confessed to consuming Wallin's blood. When he was pressed on the massacre days after the Wallin murder, Chase claimed to know little about the incident, although he suggested that he believed David was something other than human, but he wouldn't say what. He would also say that he was sorry for the murders. The defense would ask for a verdict of second-degree murder in the hope that this would spare Richard of receiving the death penalty, but the prosecution argued that he was a monster who was aware of his actions and was beyond help. On the 8th of May 1979, after 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of 6 counts of first-degree murder. The jury would also find Chase legally sane during the sanity phase of the trial. After 4 hours, the jury would determine that Chase should be sentenced to die in the gas chamber at San Quentin Penitentiary. On Boxing Day 1980, while awaiting his fate, a guard would check in on Chase's cell, only to find him laying on his back in his bunk bed. He was breathing, but didn't respond to the guard's call. The guard didn't find this unusual. However, when he was checked again at 11:05 AM, the same guard would find Chase on his stomach with both legs hanging off the bunk bed, feet placed on the floor. When he failed to respond to the guard again, the guard entered and found that Chase was dead. The cell was searched by the coroner and found a strange suicide note telling the reader he had taken some pills. Chase was on medication to treat hallucinations and depression, which would be delivered to his cell directly. It was found that he had been hoarding the pills and overdosed. The cause of death was determined as toxic ingestion. In a twisted sense of irony, despite Chase's long-term concerns over his heart, when he was examined, it was found that his heart was normal size and in good shape. I think it goes without saying that this is perhaps the most disturbing case that I've covered by far. Chase was a man who was severely ill. He would tell FBI agents that he was Jewish, which he wasn't. He would say that he was persecuted by the Nazis because he had a Star of David on his forehead, but he didn't. He would also say that Nazis were connected to UFOs and that they would use telepathy to command him to kill to replenish his blood. It was also apparent that he was aware as to what he was doing, as each time he committed his crimes, he would take a pair of gloves with him. This was a crucial factor during the trial, given the claims the defense were making at the time. To this day, the FBI still use this case as the archetypal model for understanding the disorganized killer. To my knowledge, I struggle to think of anyone else they could use in place of Chase. The film Unspeakable, released in 1992, would use the profile of Chase for the killer in their movie. Thank you for watching the video. If you like true crime videos, why not check out the playlist I've made where you can find my other true crime content. I'd also like to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a great time with friends and family, where you're able to see them. Hopefully the current situation doesn't disrupt your celebrations too much. Until next time, take care, and goodbye.